What's up, guys? So far in the last few videos, we've covered the calm and centered Waterbenders, the stalwart and solid Earthbenders, the hot-headed and militaristic Firebenders. So you have to know what I'm going to be talking about today. That's right, it's time to blow you away with the culture, history, and traditions of the Air Nation. So get your heads out of the clouds, kiddos! I'm Kris Carr, and today we're talking about the Air Nomads and airbending. Before we dive in, here's the part that reminds you that we're just 4 people trying to make you videos each week. That means a metric butt-ton of research, studio time, and editing. And with your help, you can make it so it's almost like we're not making minimum wage. But I mean, we are. Going to college was such a waste. Sorry, Mom and Dad. If you're feeling generous and want to spread the love, head over to our Patreon page and see if a donation tier works for you. We'll reward you with some sweet behind-the-scenes looks and more. Watching, sharing, liking, and subscribing is still the greatest way you can help our channel. On to the airbending goodness.
First, you form the ball. Then you gotta get on quick.
As I've done with the rest of my Avatar series, I want to start things off with the real-world influences that shaped the Air Nomads.
The Air Nomads detached themselves from worldly concerns and found peace and freedom.
Air Nomad is the collective term for the group of people who practice the art of airbending. While considered one of the 4 major nations, the Air Nomads were wanderers. I mean, they call them nomads for a reason, guys.
The Air Nation will reclaim its nomadic roots and roam the earth.
They had 4 air temples, each placed at the 4 corners of the globe, atop mountain ranges, under cliffs, and on remote islands. Unlike the other nations, the people of the Air Nation were all benders due to the high level of spirituality of their people.
You can tell by the way they move, they're not airbending. Those people have no spirit.
Also, unlike the other nations run by royalty and hereditary monarchies, the Air Nomads had a council of senior monks and nuns at their temples who focused on peaceful teachings, believing that all should live in a harmonious society free of division. We also know that the Air Nomads were fun-loving people with a great sense of humor. With all that in mind, the Air Nomads are mostly based on Tibetan culture, the Shaolin monks, and Sri Lankan Buddhism. We can see this with their monastic cultural attributes: bald heads, their wardrobe, their vegetarian diet, and their meditation practices.
I need to look deep inside myself.
Even the architecture is rooted in Shaolin design. The air temples with their brick pagodas are modeled after the pagoda forest of the Shaolin Temple in China. Tibetan Buddhists also make cakes like the ones Gyatso and Aang made together. However, these are actually sacrificial cakes used in ceremonies to appease wrathful Buddhist deities. So throwing them at other monks probably would have been frowned upon.
2, 3.
Since we learn about Air Nomad culture and beliefs via Aang and later his son Tenzin, we'll also be looking a lot at Aang himself when discussing cultural and religious influences. There are strong parallels between the Avatar and the Dalai Lama. The title of Dalai Lama is, just like the Avatar, a title. The current Dalai Lama, who is the 14th reincarnation, has both a birth name, religious name, and the title. Fun fact, His Holiness's religious name is actually Tenzin Gyatso. This served as the source of which the creators used to name 2 of the most prominent airbenders in the series. Tibetans use a set of toys to find the next Dalai Lama, which the Air Nomads also use while looking for the new Avatar.
The toys you picked were the 4 Avatar relics. These items belong to Avatar's past, your own past lives.
Of the hundreds of toys presented to them, the Avatar would pick the 4 toys that belonged to the past Avatars because they were familiar to them. Now, this is the same process used in choosing a new Dalai Lama, asking questions and presenting possessions of the Dalai Lama candidate.
I just chose them because they seemed fun.
You chose them because they were familiar.
Like the Dalai Lama, Aang was the reincarnated spiritual leader of his people. By season 3, Aang is wearing clothing very similar to the Dalai Lama. It's tradition in Buddhism for the right arm of the Dalai Lama to always be uncovered. The Dalai Lama acts as a monk, but is seen as the wisest and most revered of the monks of the Geleg school, which is the newest school of teaching of Tibetan Buddhism. And although he is highly praised and revered across the world as a symbol of peace, he's actually never allowed to return to his home country of Tibet ever again. Due to the political climate of the 1970s, Tenzin Gyatso expressed concerns that he could be the last Dalai Lama. This sentiment is definitely reflected in The Last Airbender, with Aang being the sole surviving airbender after the Air Nomad genocide.
It wasn't your fault, but you were right. And if Firebenders found this temple, that means they found the other ones too. I really am the last airbender.
Obviously, one of the most disturbing events to take place within the world of Avatar is the obliteration of the Air Nomads. This genocide served as the catalyst for the 100-Year War and strongly mirrors the events of the Tibetan Rebellion. A 17-point agreement between the People's Republic of China and the representatives of the Dalai Lama was made in 1951 that would allow certain Tibetan provinces out of the administration of the Tibetan government in Lhasa. By 1959, tensions were high. Threats of kidnapping plots against the Dalai Lama had been made, and eventually, the citizens of Lhasa declared Tibetan independence. The rebellion lasted only 2 days as the Dalai Lama escaped to India. In that short time, almost 87,000 Tibetans were killed, and 3 of Lhasa's monasteries were severely damaged. While both events saw the near destruction of Air Nomads and Tibetan culture and centered around the potential annihilation of their leaders, the parties involved differ. I let you know in my Earthbending video that the Earth Nation seemed most influenced by China, whereas the Fire Nation seemed to strongly reflect Imperial Japan. If this was a direct correlation, it would have been the Earth that carried out this attack. But everything changed when the Earth Kingdom attacked. It doesn't have the same ring, does it? Of course, we should also note that the Tibetans rose up against the Chinese. In Avatar, the Air Nomads were unarmed and attacked without any warning. Even after all these atrocities were committed against his people, Aang still upheld his people's belief that revenge was never the answer.
The monks always taught me that all life is sacred, even the life of the tiniest spiderfly caught in its own web.
Yes, all life is sacred.
A century later, with the birth of a new Air Nation, an oath of non-aggression would be declared, and these new Air Nomads would swear to use combat as a last resort.
We have to go break out Mom and my brothers! You swore an oath of non-aggression when you became an Airbender. You can't just attack Kuvira.
Air Acolytes! Aang may have been the last Airbender for a time, but that didn't mean his culture would die with him. Enter the Air Acolytes.
Master Tenzin, welcome!
Good to see you again, Abbot Shung.
The Air Acolytes were founded by the members of the official Avatar Aang fan club, a group of Earth Kingdom fans. Initially, Aang is bothered by this sort of fangirling. He feels his culture's being mocked. Eventually, he transforms this fan club into the Acolytes, a group meant to uphold the culture and traditions of the Air Nomads. Of course, Aang would go on to have an airbending son with Katara, Tenzin, who would then have 3 airbending children of his own. After harmonic convergence in the Age of Korra, the shift in energy and balance would gift several other previously non-benders with the ability to airbend, including Aang's other son, Bumi.
Look what can be done in only a few short weeks of practice!
Era of Rava. How did these nomads first learn to bend? Back to the era of Rava. Like the previous elemental bending arts, the power of air was temporarily bestowed upon the inhabitants of the giant lion turtle when they'd leave the village to search for food. After leaving the turtle, those who learned airbending were taught by flying bisons, gentle and giant creatures who had become sacred in the air nomad culture.
Choose well. A sky bison is a companion for life.
These benders would even go on to borrow the arrow mark from the flying bison's body for their tattoos as a way to honor the noble beasts who bestowed this great power to them. These markings would symbolize the mastery of airbending and were given to benders upon the completion and mastery of the art.
I learned from the monks, but the original airbenders were the sky bison. Maybe you can give me a lesson sometime, buddy.
The arrows mark the paths through the body which Chi moves. Airbending! The airbending style comes from Bagu, or Baguazhang. This method of martial arts focuses on the theory of continuously changing in response to the situation at hand in order to overcome your opponent with skill, not brute force. There are also parallels to Jeet Kune Do, which was famously developed by the late great Bruce Lee. Lee found that many of the schools of martial arts were entirely too restrictive and set in their ways. Because of that, in 1967, Bruce just threw up his hands and said, "Screw it, I'll just do it for you." So, he developed his revolutionary new technique centered around practicality, flexibility, speed, and efficiency, intercepting or attacking when your opponent is about to attack. This style was developed to use minimal effort to achieve maximum effect, and is described as the art of fighting without fighting, the style of no style. These both make sense for airbending, not just because of the nature of air and wind, but because of the pacifism of the air nomads. This style is almost entirely defensive. That being said, it is incredibly diverse. Not only can they use their mastery of wind to effortlessly bob and weave away from enemy strikes and projectiles, airbenders can overwhelm assailants with large, powerful attacks. pretty much working with a less specific Green Lantern sort of power here. They can create a thin sliver of air to slice an opponent as if they were using a sword. Want to flatten a group of baddies? Whoosh! Force a thick sheet of air toward the ground. They can even summon a tornado like it's nothing, turning even the most evilest of villains into Philip Seymour Hoffman from Twister. It can also be used very nefariously, as we see during an episode of Legend of Korra, when an airbender actually uses his abilities to essentially force choke his opponent as a way to suffocate them. Ugh, it's almost as bad as bloodbending. Almost. Specific bending. Okay, so we've gone through this in my previous videos. Skilled waterbenders can hone their mastery and allow them to vine bend and blood bend. Especially skilled earthbenders are able to tap into the deep power of the planet's minerals to allow them the especially useful skill of metal bending. Adept and ferocious firebenders, through deep focus and training, are able to harness the power of a raging storm through lightning bending. So, what crazy awesome powers do the airbenders get? Well, for them it's a bit different. As I said before, airbenders are very peaceful and typically turn the other cheek rather than lash out in violence. So while all the other bending schools are gifted with active and offensive special powers, airbenders use more passive and defensive powers, as well as more travel-based abilities. Now, let's just start with the obvious. They can fly! I mean, sure, they typically are shown to use this ability in conjunction with a glider, like Aang's weapon of choice. But what's to stop them from utilizing warm and cold air currents to allow them to glide to their heart's content? We also see Aang frequently sitting cross-legged, buzzing around on a sphere of air to get from point A to point B quickly. And the possibilities don't stop there. On a few occasions, Aang uses his airbending prowess to create air bubbles around people's heads so that they can breathe underwater.
Also, they apparently had pretty good senses of humor.
We've touched the surface of airbending and airbenders. So, what else do you want to know? Let me know in the comments what else you're dying to know about the world of Avatar. We've got more Avatar on the way for you, so be sure to hit that bell so you know exactly when our latest crash course is out. Need to watch more now? That's awesome! Just click to the left of my face, or you can catch us on Roku or Plex. Thanks again to everyone helping us out on Patreon, and thank you for watching. See you, Space Cowboy.